Is there any other place in Wisconsin that's strange like this, or beyond Wisconsin? Where do you think they were going?
Gretchen informed me of a place in Minnesota called the Kensington Runestone, I believe it's called. I hope I'm
Okay.
pronouncing that correctly. And it's believed to be Norwegian Viking in nature.
Mm.
And I guess when it was found by a farmer, I'm under the assumption that the translation hadn't been translated till sometime later.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yes, there was a stone found in or near Kensington, Minnesota, not far from a railway track, actually. And yes, it was found by a farmer, and I believe he was just grubbing, and he must have pulled out the roots of a tree out of the ground, and the stone was there. So it was entangled with the roots of a poplar tree, and it was face down. And when he lifted it up, he saw Norse writing. Well, not writing. Norse symbols, the runes, like Viking runes, chiseled on the surface. And it's quite a lot of text, and it's on the face of the stone and also on one of the sides. He had it translated, but the people he showed it to at first did not believe it was original or authentic. They thought it was a forgery. But then later, other people came and looked at it, and they said, no, it's not a forgery. It's actually really a Norse inscription. And it talks about several men who came from Norway and Sweden, and they mentioned on the stone that the rest of their party is by a lake, and probably like one of the Great Lakes. The year is 1362, so 1362. So this would have been after the Templar era, because Templars were disbanded in 1312. But these Norsemen, they would have been Christians. So that's a good combination. Even though they were Norsemen, they weren't pagans anymore. They were Christians. So these symbols of Christian faith would have been something that they were quite familiar with.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then what I did, and I said, is there a connection between these sites, the tomb and the Kensington Runestone? So as I did, I drew a line from Minnesota to my site, to Site 3, and all the way to Lake Michigan. The stone to the west, the Runestone, the tomb, Site 3, are almost straight across from each other, except maybe for a couple miles, which maybe could have been due to difficult travel.
Very interesting.
But then again, to do a line of sight across 2 states would have been difficult at best, extremely difficult. But then to only be maybe a couple miles off that straight line theory is close enough for me.
How do you think these men navigated in the wilderness, especially if they're passing through a dense forest?
I think they used the Native Americans as their guides. They would have been, the Native Americans would have known this woods. They would have known the other tribes next to them and traded, and they usually kept to themselves. They may have traded with each other, but their hunting lands and their lands were their lands. They were very protective of their property.
Naturally.
They don't see it as property, but Native Americans never even understood what land ownership was. They didn't understand how people could own lands, but they were protective of their areas.
Right. There were boundaries that were respected.
Yes.
A lot of people think that when, for example, Vikings came to North America and they set up a settlement in Lansdowne Meadows in Newfoundland, that it was like a one-time trip. It wasn't. Actually, the Vikings during the Viking era, and then Norsemen during the Christian era, they kept returning to North America. They would get lumber on the east coast of Canada, and then put that lumber on their ships, take it to Greenland, and then Iceland and Norway. The kings of Norway were taxing this lumber, and there are actually tax records about the imported lumber from Canada. The last known record of a ship that came from Canada to Iceland is from 1347. So the year 1347.
Wow.
So basically, these Norsemen were traveling to Canada for 350 years.
That's amazing. Just amazing.
And honestly, I don't think that during those 350 years, they confined themselves to Lansdowne Meadows in Newfoundland. I think they would have explored farther south, farther west, and I can easily see them, picture them on the Great Lakes, in the area of the Great Lakes.
Well, the St. Lawrence River is a perfect way to navigate the Great Lakes. It connects just about every one of them. Just at the top of Lake Michigan, or Upper Michigan, Lower Green, there's a small tract of land, but it wouldn't have been that difficult for them to ford across that land and continue on. Easy travel. They were great navigators.
Right. What's next for you in this exploration and investigation? What will you do at the site 1 or site 3?
Well, there's another one called site 2.
Site 2.
My son again found. Yes. This mystery just will not go to bed.
It keeps expanding.
And, it does, and it's a blessing and a curse.
Right.
More of a blessing.
Oh, for sure.
And so my son, he told me about, while he was hunting back across the river, he saw a fish symbol on it. I have to keep my family involved in this because someone's got to carry on and solve this mystery or bring it to fruition. And I says, well, what do you mean, a fish on a rock? And so I drew the ancient Greek style fish. And I said, did it look like this? He says, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Oh my gosh, there goes my curiosity meter off the charts.
Nice. Well, I like that you are involving your family in this because without the support of your family, things would be so much harder.
Yes. Very hard.
And this fish symbol at site 2, is it the same as the fish symbols at site 1?
No, it is. I've looked at the ancient Christian symbols that were used at various times, the Roman, Greek era, and it resembles that very much. And just yesterday or today, I sent Sean Williamson a picture of that fish, and he said, yeah, he could see the fish, and that it was, without having him boots on the ground, it's very, very difficult for him to say one way or the other, and I don't at all blame him for that. He's got impeccable reputation. He's very, very, very knowledgeable, and so just the fact that he could see it is very good for me.
Right.
So in this general area, right now there's the tomb. You have the rock, Gretchen named the Night Rock, with a cross pate. Across the river, you have a fish symbol. Further east, you have what looks like the building of a fort, a relay station, something. Probably 50 to 75 cut stones in the deep forest. And again, I am asking that age-old question, why?
Right. What was the reason, the motivation? living in the forest for any length of time, it's painful because I don't know about Wisconsin, but in Nova Scotia, we have so many insects, black flies. They're tiny, but they will get in the corner of your eye and bite you there, or they will even climb into my sleeve, and it's just crazy. And they swarm, and we have mosquitoes and ticks with Lyme disease. So I admire anyone who would have done that, like set up a fort and a tomb in the forest in Wisconsin.
It had to be terrible because it's amazing that the mosquitoes get so big here that some of them look like they have eyebrows.
Oh, you're saying it with such a serious face. But as a hunter, right? Because, you move through the forest and you know exactly what kind of challenges there are. And you have modern equipment now, you can now have a cell phone with you and a GPS so you don't get lost. Or, how to get help. But can you imagine 700 years ago, there was maybe no help?
I just could not imagine. All I can say, my hat's off to them and their tenacity, their strength, their courage, just to wander, to leave your home thousands of miles away, going to someplace, somewhere, somehow, and not knowing what you're going to encounter there. But that's one of the greatest things about man, is that we have to know why. We have to know. And I always told my children, I always have to know what's over there. I have to go look. I got to get my feet on the ground. I have to know why.
Right. If you could talk to them, if you could speak to these men who did this, what would you ask them?
Oh, I would probably want to know why you're here. Who are you looking for? Oh, and by the way, can I help?
Oh, you would want to help them. Very nice.
Absolutely.
Well,
I would be right there. I'd be the fry cook if that's what it meant.
Aw. Well, how generous of you. Your reaction could have been different. Your reaction could have been defensive, but it sounds like you would want to extend the olive branch to them and help them and make their life a little easier, because they were total foreigners in a foreign land, right?
Well, that's just it. We don't get many chances in our lifetimes to be kind to someone, especially a stranger. And we just lose that opportunity when God puts people in your way. He put Gretchen in my way, and now he has put you in my way. And Sean Williamson, though we haven't met face to face, he's willing to talk to me, write a report from me, and it's all divine intervention.
Right. They say there are no what's the word? Coincidences or accidents, that everything happens for a reason.
I think if you allow yourself to be open-minded, and then when approached with something you have no knowledge of, like the Knights Templar, the cross, the tomb, something that just kept haunting me for years and years and years. I never let go of it, and it would never go away. And now I hate to say it, I'm becoming more driven to find out, are there other sites, since they're all lining up in this direction, are there other sites along the way?
How large is the Mohican Reservation? Since this is on the reservation, how big of an area can you search within? Because you're at home there, so you can go, within that boundary anywhere, right?
Right. You have to be a tribal member, and I was able to go to the tribal council and get permission for Gretchen to come onto the land. And it's just a little over 30,000 acres.
Okay.
So you can get lost for quite a long time.
Oh, for sure. Do you feel that within those 30,000 acres, there could be a site 4 even
I guess the way this is lining up with the
Mm-hmm.
rune stone, it would have to be more east and west. But here comes the but again. Near site one, the tomb. Me and Gretchen found, I showed her some rocks near there, which are all cut 90-degree angles and faced, and it started as in the shape of a rectangle. So there was definitely a lot of activity going on at the tomb, just to the south of it, and in that general area. And there is something significant in that area because that's where two rivers join, not too far away. There's a big waterfall to the north, and I'm not going to say the name of it. I don't want to, it's too close to the tomb. And they had the fish across the river, the tomb on the other side. Site 3 to the west, all within walking distance. There was something that was drawing them to this location, and
Okay.
they wanted to be. They wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't selected by chance. It was selected for a reason.
Yes, that is what's troubling me. What's that reason?
Mm-hmm. Perhaps the answer is somewhere in the scripture, in the Bible. Maybe you could look there for some clues, how where Jesus' tomb was located and any other locations of significance in the final days of his life.
Right. Completely different country, completely different time. Many peoples of many nationalities coming together. Probably the greatest story in history is the story of Christ and what he stood for, the things he believed, the things that he taught. From that time of his birth to his death to his disciples, his face to change the world forever, and will continue to change the world forever. And if we don't allow ourselves that knowledge, I think we do a great disservice to each other and to God.
Well, and 700 years ago, a band of Templars came to North America and made it all the way to that spot in Wisconsin. They did not leave their names behind, but they left the expression and symbols of their faith in stone at that site. So it was terribly important to them. As you said, it's one of the greatest stories in human history, and we have it in stone in Wisconsin.
Yes, and that's so amazing. And there's this very smart person, and she once told me, she says that the Templars were very secretive. Never put their names on tombstones, and just left faint marks. So to find these marks is incredible, and I have to give so much credit to Gretchen Cornwall, and I have to give a lot of credit to you for your insight into things, Templar.
Thank you. I can't.
You're welcome.
I can't imagine finding something like this in the forest in Nova Scotia. But if I found it, I would probably follow the same line of reasoning. Who was here, when, why this spot, how can they be identified, and I would probably try to reach out to as many people as I could, just like you did, right? Because I recognize my own limitations, and I read a lot, but I'm not a trained archaeologist. I don't have a degree in history, so I would probably try to do the same thing as you did. I would try to go to other people who are more knowledgeable, but I can also imagine that they would hesitate to go to the site and help me. Because, their reputation and careers and tenure and pensions would be at stake. So Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's a
I,
big burden.
I am just getting a small taste of that. And you are right. I'll, I'll, I'll say this. Templars were there. They left their mark there. I'm sorry if it steps on some people with fancy letters behind their names that I don't have.
No.
Um, uh, you're not going to travel that far back in the woods, go through that much trouble of building a tomb, putting 3 crosses. Why not 5? Why not 7? Why 3? It's very obvious. It's a crucifixion story. The sword. Now that I thought it over, it is the Garden of Gethsemane
Mm-hmm,
story.
mm-hmm.
The tomb, the stone rolled away, perched above the opening of the entrance. It's the resurrection story being told in granite.
It has. Can I share an idea with you? When you said that it's a resurrection story, immortalized in granite. So let's say these were
Yes.
Templars who escaped from France in 1307 and they got away. We know they had ships, and those ships are unaccounted for. Nobody knows what happened to them. Let's say Templars made it to North America and to Wisconsin. Do you think that they themselves felt like they were given another chance, another life to live with their brothers back in Europe, sitting in dungeons, waiting to be tortured? These guys got a second chance to live. So in a way, I hope this doesn't sound offensive to people with strong religious views, but I feel like some of these Templars were given a second chance, a second life, and maybe they felt that it was like getting resurrected, maybe.
Well, I think that's a great idea, and I think you're right. Excuse me. They were definitely fleeing persecution
Mm-hmm.
to the nth degree as a sign of their faith, the Christian faith. But that's an amazing thing about God. If you go back and look at the time of Jesus and his disciples, when Jesus was arrested and taken into custody, it caused these disciples to flee and go to different islands. And John, probably Paul, the Apostle Paul, one of the greatest writers in the Bible, was a persecutor of Christ.
Yes.
He went to the nth degree to persecute Christians. And then all of a sudden he runs into God one day on a road and became the greatest apostle, the disciple of Christ.
Right.
But God scatters his people through various parts of the country to tell his story, to get his message out, and to do his work. And why not use the Templars, expand them into the New World, to bring that story to the rest?
You are you are Mohican. You are an indigenous person. Can you put yourself in the shoes of indigenous people in that area 700 years ago? What would they have thought about this band of Templars showing up on their doorstep?
I think they would have been curious, but very cautious. There's one thing that you learn early growing up on the reservation is that if you are invited to someone's house, you become part of that house at that time for that time. You don't complain what's put in front of you. You don't ask for food. If it's offered, you accept it. If it's not, you don't ask. You don't sit down until you're invited to sit down, and you don't come in until you're invited in. So if the Templars were sensitive to this and understood this and respected that, I could see the people's helping them.
Right, right. Do you think that the native people would have had any objections to the Templars setting up the tomb and chiseling in the face of the stones?
Well, I'm sure they questioned why, and maybe it was out of tolerance, maybe it was out of respect, but from what I understand, it didn't go too well with those folks in Minnesota at the Runestone. Something happened there, and some boundaries were crossed, and it didn't go well.
Right, right. But at the site in Wisconsin, the men stayed there long enough to set up the tomb and chisel the symbols, and then split those rocks and dress them. So that takes some time. So I'd say they were more successful in establishing a good or friendly relationship with the indigenous people, or at least that's
Yes.
my thinking. Maybe it's not sound logic, but
Oh, I think it's very good logic, because let's face it, if you've got somebody living in your front yard that you don't like, you're not going to let them live there very long.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there was there had to be a partnership and a great sense of trust, and how Christianity hasn't always went well for some people, even though its intentions were well meant. Some people suffer greatly under the hand of so-called Christianity. So that's probably a topic for a different time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So many different perspectives or angles that you can look at the site. There's the archaeological perspective, the historical perspective, the cultural perspective, religious perspective, right? But
Yes.
I always try to see things through the eyes of other people and try to put myself in their place or in their shoes and empathize and see what it's like for them, so that I have deeper or greater understanding. And that's why I was asking you what you would have asked them and how the native people would have felt. And I know that we are just theorizing, we weren't there, but
Right.
it's the closest we can get.
Yes, it is. And the other thing is too, the Templars I'm going to say Templars made these stones, cut these stones, and worked these stones. They weren't just there for the exercise. I think they wanted to leave something behind for those coming after them. The Templars knew what to look for from their teachings, how to disguise things, I believe, and how to leave just enough sign so others can follow. And I still think, don't know why I have no proof of this, but I still think there is something at either Site 3, or there is something at the tomb, and the area it's probably only been 1 to 2% explored, because it's rough, it's hard, and it only makes sense. If someone's coming after you, you're going to leave them something to continue the push forward.
These would be other Templars that would have followed in the wake of this first group?
Yes.
Okay.
And say you pushed further west and you wanted to come back. Well, Templars were great for setting up different banks along their routes. So why not do that to this new?
Well, it would be interesting to know if there are any graves at the site. Have you considered that? If anybody's buried there?
I have found a grinding stone, which would be indigenous, Native American, and you have to be real careful. It's very significant if you should come across I believe I found one spot, and I'm approaching that very, very carefully for its religious implications and because of our tribal customs and things like that.
Sure.
So I'm keeping some of this very, very secretive because I don't want other people that are going there just to poke around and to see what they can find, or and like that. It's not trying to be deceptive. I'm just trying to protect.
Right. I understand. And it is something that you have to consider for the future. Once more people become aware of this, I'm sure they will express the desire to visit the site. So you'll have to consider how you will keep it off the map and keep it protected, so that you don't have
So far, so
uninvited,
good.
so that you don't have uninvited, unauthorized people with ill intentions coming there and taking stuff, right?
Yes, I'm hoping to move this forward
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that maybe someday Sean Williamson would like to come and look. I
Well,
could
that would
get
be
permission for him
wonderful.
to come look somehow. Oh, this would just move this forward so quickly. Either it's going to be big and great, or it's just going to say, you know, you don't have anything. Have a nice day.
I don't think he's like that. I think he would give you a very honest, objective, professional opinion, but he would also give you the good news. I don't think he would try to suppress any
Yes.
information.
No, I don't think he would either. His skills and his talent, and he's from our brief conversations, I believe he's a Christian man, and I do believe that. He led when we made first contact. He led with that faith, and I was very impressed by that, and I reciprocated in turn, because I wanted him to know where I come from, and that I was merely in search of the truth. Let the chips fall where they may, and
Right.
having that knowledge of that's the caliber of person that he is, I would have been satisfied with any answer he gave me, but hoping that this is the real deal.
I think so. Well, your findings are undeniable. The site is there, the cut stones are there, the tomb is there, the symbols are there. It's not something that you could just deny or wish away, right? You're just looking for answers.
Well, that's all I'm looking for. And one of the last conversations Sean and I had, he says, "Tell them that I'm coming out of the tomb."
Nice. Coming out of the tomb, right? And
yes.
And so it's symbolic, but it also exists in real life, right? The tomb is actually there. And you said that
Yes.
there's east entrance, so it's the tomb faces east.
Correct. 40 years ago, I could go in the east entrance.
Mm-hmm.
I could walk through there. Didn't have to be sideways. It's about 3/4 of a turn, and I could go through there, and you could look up and see the sky. But now, 40 years later, the massive storms, the weight of these stones facing each other, balanced in such a precarious way, the large trees growing on top of them, trees and the frost and the movement of rocks and stuff due to pressure, has started to close up the east entrance. But then Sean, he sent me in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very similar to the east entrance of this. But as far as I can tell, in the 40-some years that I know of the existence of this tomb, the front has remained intact and hasn't moved. Except there might have been a stone that fell off the top, partially blocking the front.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. What an amazing discovery. And in Wisconsin, of all places, but there's that connection to Great Lakes. And as you said, the water was like a highway in those days. There were no highways, no roads, but the rivers and the lakes were there, and they could easily be navigable. And if you could make friends with the native peoples, then you could keep moving west and go wherever you wanted to go. Do you think these Templars stayed in North America or returned to Europe?
Oh, that's a question for someone so much smarter than myself.
I think you're plenty. I think you're plenty smart. You're plenty smart.
I have to have some breadcrumbs to follow,
mm-hmm.
and then unfortunately, my way of investigating is, after years and years of doing this, I worked very hard to disprove these theories. That this couldn't be. And that only leaves you with one result, that it has to be true. And then that still isn't enough for me. I seek out people like Gretchen Cornwall, who's very versed and very knowledgeable and has this experience. Then I still have to go further. By the grace of God, I was able to make contact with Sean Williamson, and I'm still searching for more validation, because I want this. If this is supposed to be revealed, it has to be done with really credible people, like yourself, Gretchen, Mr. Williamson, and whoever wants to come in and help make this come to life. And I'll say one thing: for years it has bothered me. Why me to discover this? And I think as time passes, I'm able to accept it, and I'll take it by grace that God has put this challenge in front of me, and so be it. And I'll just accept it.
Well, it sounds like you have embraced it and put your whole person into it, your mind, your heart, your policing instincts. I think that you could not have done more. I think you did everything you could, everything that was in your power.
Well, I really appreciate that. And if I'm missing something, or if you see something, or Gretchen sees something, get my attention. Say, hey, it's just that age-old thing. I have to know why.
If people wanted to get in touch with you, should they go through Gretchen?
They can contact me directly, and then me and Gretchen have a very close relationship, a professional relationship, where we share a lot of our ideas, our thoughts, how we're going to approach a subject, and what our next moves are. Okay.
People can find you on Facebook and Facebook Messenger?
Yes. If they would contact me, I'm going to be very careful. It's just the way I am.
Well, of course.
It's just that part of me. If their intentions are real, I'll figure that out very quickly. And if they're not, I will figure that out. Validation, knowledge is a great thing. Yes, I would be willing to have people reach out to me and want to discuss it further. I'll be very, very open and honest and save them a lot of headache and heartache. I will only take a very few select special people back to that site.
I understand.
Those whom I trust immensely.
I understand. I think your caution is well placed and commendable too. You would not want to attract the wrong people to the site. It would be nice to see an archaeologist, a trained professional archaeologist, come there and map it and maybe do some test excavations, very, very careful, but document everything. So here's hoping that
I would welcome that.
Yeah, well, maybe this.
I would welcome that.
Maybe this interview will find its way to the right person with the right training and credentials, who has an open mind and who is willing to take his or her chance and come to Wisconsin and take a look at the site.
That would be great, and I cannot thank you enough for being part of this.
You're welcome.
You're very special. You're a very special person. Thank you.
No, thank you. That feels good. I don't know if I deserve it, but I hope that I do.
Yes, you do.
All right. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like people to know?
There's more in this area to be discovered. what's holding me back is, knowledge is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to change history, and I think there will be a lot of pushback from it from scholars and people who make their living off of studying and writing books about Templars. But this tomb didn't get here by mistake. It was intentionally built. The crosses aren't there by mistake. This is challenging thousands and thousands of years of perceived ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They can look at this two ways, you know. Does this challenge their thinking? Does this challenge their credentials that they died and fell off the face of the earth? Absolutely. But then maybe they could look at this a different way and say that the knowledge they had at that has all of a sudden came to life in a new place. Mm-hmm. And now instead of attacking it, maybe they should think, hey, maybe I should just get a hold of this crazy guy from Wisconsin, and let's see what's there's really there, and we can all work together to solve this wonderful mystery.
Right. Well, the only way to discover something is to keep an open mind and open heart. If you have already decided what is true and what is not true, it escapes you because your mind is just, you got blinders on and no new knowledge or information can enter it. So you have to keep it open, and come what may, the truth is what it is. And I think all you've done is just describe what is at the site and ask questions. I think you've taken the right approach.
And well, you bring up some really, really great points about willing to accept what's there, and instead of condemning it, to help bring it to fruition. Don't throw a stone, throw a rope.
I love
throw
that.
Throw some help.
Right. Don't throw a stone, throw that other person rope. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great way to end this interview. I really love that thought, that idea. I'm going to think about it for days because that's who I am. I think about stuff for a long time. Okay. All right.
Well, great. Thank you for allowing me into your life.
Thank you, Wayne, as well, for sharing a part of your life and who you are with me and my readers and viewers. I truly hope that some other people will reach out to you and that they will be able to contribute and move this forward.
Thank you. It's been a real blessing.
Wonderful. Okay, bye.
Bye now.